Hello and welcome. My name is Stefan Petrov, and today you're with Spiritual Conversations. Now, if you're new around here, this channel is about spirituality, about practical wisdom that we can apply to everyday life, things that actually connect us deeper to who we truly are. This is what this channel is all about. And for those of you who have been around for a while now on this channel, this video is going to be slightly longer than usual, probably, I guess. And the topic we're going to discuss is the essence of the spiritual path, or the heart of it. Why are we on the spiritual path? What's the purpose of it? The difficulties that may arise on the path, how to overcome them, and everything in between. So this is a great resource for those of you who actually are starting their spiritual path right now, because you have a deeper understanding of what you're getting into yourself right now. And for those of you who have been a while on the spiritual path, it's also great, so we can re-encourage yourself, so to say, to keep going, to keep connecting deeper and deeper and deeper, finding more truth. So let's dive right in. What is the essence of the spiritual path? We could say that the essence or the heart of spirituality, because there are many views on this topic, there are many perspectives, different theories about why we're here, about incarnation or reincarnation, about divinity, about God, the universe. So there are all these different viewpoints on spirituality. But I would say the essence of all of it is to have a more deeper connection to your true essence, to connect deeper to yourself and find truth there. That, we could say, is the heart of the spiritual path. Everything that points you within to go there, that is the practice that we want to follow. Because spirituality has nothing to do with your external life. Your external life, your circumstances, we could say there is no separation between things, sure, but spirituality should not be used and cannot be really used as a means to improve your external life, to achieve your goals, and so on. I'm not saying that these things are not important. I'm saying that the spiritual path has nothing to do with these things. So, before embarking on this journey of spirituality, what you need to realize is that the more you drop your expectations of what the spiritual path will give you, the more you can drop these expectations, the more free you will be on this path, and the more you will be able to discover truth within yourself. And the spiritual path is not an easy one. It's basically a path where you have to unlearn everything that you've picked up during this lifetime. Everything you've been taught is right may turn out to be not right in the spiritual path. Everything you thought was important may not be so important on the spiritual path. This is why the worldly path, we could call it, whereas you build a career, you get a family, you have kids, you buy a car, you buy a house, and so on. The material aspect of this reality is a completely different path than the spiritual path, because the worldly path is concerned about external reality, while the spiritual path is concerned with internal reality. And all you need to know about internal reality is that the more you get in touch with internal reality, paradoxically, the more you are going to be present and more in touch with external reality. Because again, there is no separation between internal reality and external reality. They're like this, they're together, merged with one another. So, yes, the spiritual path will give you, let's say, some benefits to your external life, but it will also take away a lot from it. Because the things you used to pursue may no longer interest you. The things you found meaningful and worth your time, you may see that they're basically meaningless. They don't do anything. So these are things that you will encounter on the spiritual path, and once you start that spiritual path, there is no going back. Once you realize certain truths about yourself and about this world, you cannot unsee that. So you cannot go back to your old life. No way of doing that, because now your perception has changed while pursuing so-called spirituality. Now, there is, I would say, three very important practices in spirituality. Um, you could practice all of them, all three of them, or you could practice just one or two. It's up to you what resonates with you. Probably there are more than three, but these are the three basics that we really need to keep returning to, because they are the essence of our spiritual practice. Because we need some form of spiritual practice. Without spiritual practice, spirituality only lives on a conceptual level. You only have a theory and some knowledge about spirituality, but you have no direct experience with it. That's why we need some kind of a spiritual practice to do on a daily basis. And that's the key. It really needs to be done consistently, because like everything else in this world, consistency is the key to every success, and it's true about the spiritual path too. So what are these three practices? The first one is meditation. Meditation is one of the essential practices of the spiritual path, which basically shuts off everything external by closing your eyes, sitting down in a posture that you will not fall asleep. So you can remain awake while being in meditation, which sitting is a great posture to do that. I do it crossing my legs and sitting. My back is straight, not too much, but also not too little, like something in between. You close your eyes and you go within. Every spiritual practice is aiming to get you to go within yourself, because that's where true spiritual nectar is within. We could also say that the spark of God, the spark of the divine, is within you, and essentially that is what you're getting in touch with while doing your spiritual practice. So meditation is the first of these three practices. And to give you some personal story about it, I started meditating in my teenage years, like 17 or 18 I was when I was started doing meditation every single day. I've had some breaks here and there, um, but essentially you always want to return back to your spiritual practice, even though you take some breaks, because you need some breaks here and then. That's understandable. And meditation has done wonders for me. It has transformed my internal life completely. The way I relate to my external life also changed. The way I relate to people, the way I relate to anything, basically. Meditation is, as far as I know, is a healing modality, which means that it will assist you if you have some trauma. It will assist you to get free from that. Doesn't mean that it will erase the trauma, but it will make you realize that you are not the trauma. You're something deeper. You are, we could say, the consciousness or the awareness that is aware of the thoughts you have, is the aware of the emotions you have, the vision you have with your physical eyes. What's aware of that? Which leads me to the second practice, which is self-inquiry. Self-inquiry is also essential, is by that is the practice of finding and dissolving the essence of who you think you are, which is, we were conditioned and we believe that we are the personality, we are the sense of I am. And self-inquiry goes deeper into that I am feeling, which is, you know that you are, right? You're here, and when you say I, you can feel when you say I. And self-inquiry goes deeper into that, to dissolve that I, to make you realize that this I that you think you are is just a construct of the mind. It's not really who you are. And who you really are is the essence, the divine spark within you, the unchanged awareness. So that is self-inquiry, very powerful practice. And it leads you to direct experience, because like meditation, both of these practices, they give you direct experience with the living truth within you, so you can see it for yourself and beyond any shadow of the doubt know that whatever spirituality is trying to point to, which is your essence, your divine spark within you, your consciousness, your pure awareness, that is the only living thing, the only real thing, and everything else comes from that, we could say, as a byproduct or as an illusion of creation that this pure consciousness has constructed by expressing itself. And the third practice is prayer. Prayer is probably the practice that is widely known. And what is the point of prayer? Again, it's to point you within. When you pray, you're getting more in touch with the deeper aspects of yourself, because you're basically praying from there. And by praying, you go deeper, you get more in touch with yourself. And that's again, a practice that points you inward. It's not, prayer is not so much about praying to get, let's say, something in your external world, because as far as my experience goes, when I have prayed for something externally, I never received it. And that only goes to show that prayer is not something to do as like the universe or God is kind of a vending machine that you, if you pray long enough, you can actually receive what you want. That's not really what the essence of prayer is. The essence of prayer is that you connect deeper to yourself and you connect to that divinity within yourself and you pray from there. That's the entire point. It's to get you to go deeper within yourself and connect with that by praying. And these are the three essential practices. There are more, of course, like having a mantra and other practices that I may not be 100% aware of. I'm just sharing the three practices that I do, the three practices that really have accelerated my spiritual growth and my understanding of reality. And these are the basics. So feel free to dive deeper into one of these three practices or even all of them and find your own rhythm to that. How often do you do them? For how long? Find your own rhythm, because that's essentially it. Once you find your own rhythm, you don't feel like it's a burden, because spiritual practice is like the more you do it, the better it feels. It's something that never exhausts itself. It never feels like you're doing nothing. There may be days where, yes, it feels like you're wasting your time, and that's just a moment that will eventually pass. And you need to remind yourself of the experience you have while doing your spiritual practice. That in itself, that experience you have while doing your spiritual practice, will be completely enough to make you stay on that path your entire life, basically. And we could say that is the essence of spirituality. It's to point you within and to make you realize that what you're actually seeking cannot be found in the world. Because there is, like the Buddha said, there is suffering. It's that background suffering. Sometimes it's not really background, sometimes it's very foreground. You can feel it deeply, but often it's that background suffering that is never satisfied with anything in this world. It doesn't matter what you achieve, it doesn't matter how many friends you have, it doesn't matter what relationships you have, how much money you've got. There is something within that's never satisfied. And that is so because nothing in this world can satisfy that. And people might tell you that you're being ungrateful. Society might tell you that. There is something wrong with you. They will tell you that. They will tell you that this suffering needs to be cured, that somehow it's a problem that needs to be solved, when in reality that's not the problem. That is the calling that you're getting from within, to turn within and to connect to divinity within yourself. Because I can tell you that the only moments that this background suffering or that ache, that I sometimes also feel like this strange suffering somewhere in my chest that I cannot really explain what it is. The only time that comes to rest, that discomfort in the chest, that it's always there, is only when I do my spiritual practice. That is the only moment where that disappears. We could also say another moment would be where I'm with someone and we're focused on truth, we're focused on awakening, and we're sharing from the deepest place. That's also when I feel that ache, that internal suffering disappear completely. So again, that internal suffering that it's always there, never satisfied, always feeling like things are not enough, that is your own being calling you back. That is the divine spark calling you back within yourself. Without that ache, without that internal suffering, we will be lost in the world. And as we all know, there is a good and a bad force, we could call it a good and an evil force in this world, which everything is essentially one thing. Yes, that's true, but on a level of the play that we play this game in life, there is good force and evil force. And if you're completely lost, the evil force could take advantage of you and will. So there is nothing to be afraid of by saying that there is an evil force. Um, all spiritual teachings and beliefs have that evil force, which some call it the devil, others call it the demiurge in Gnosticism. They have different names for that, the force of evil, and then they have different saviors, we could call them, like Jesus Christ, the Buddha, Krishna, who came to this world and have defeated that evil force. And that is essentially what you need to do also. But it has nothing to do with defeating the force somewhere externally. It has to do with defeating the force, the evil force within you. Because the good and the evil, they are operating within this body, and you need to be aware of what is using this body, this vessel. Is it the positive side of life or is it the negative side of life? That is the play of life. Again, essentially, there is no separation between these two. Everything is one, is united, and all the good and the evil come from the same source. But we are right now in this life, and you cannot bypass that. You cannot bypass the good and the evil, which is essentially the battle of life. You cannot bypass that. Even though you realize truth, you realize that there is unity only, there is only one source of everything. And you still need to play the game because you're here. If you weren't here, then you probably would need to play the game, but on, let's say, another dimension, higher reality, yes, you may not need to play that game. So that's, we could say, the point of this life is to awaken the divinity within you so that your individual consciousness can ascend to higher levels. And that's what I remember Buddhists were talking about when they talk about escaping or ascending beyond the cycle of birth and death and birth again, rebirth. So the cycle of reincarnation. That's, as far as I remember, what the Buddhist teachings are all about. Now, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm trying to share here is that all spiritual beliefs, all spiritual paths, which there is only one path essentially, but all the forms that a spiritual path takes, which it could be through a different set of beliefs, is essentially guiding you to do the exact same thing, which is go within and ascend. What does it mean to ascend? It means to get, not really get, but the best word is really ascend to a higher level of awareness, to ascend to a higher level of consciousness, or to awaken the divinity within you and be more in touch with that. That again is the essence, is the heart of all spirituality. And there will be challenges on this path. There will be moments where you don't see value in it. You don't see why you're doing your spiritual practice. You don't see why you're reading books on the topics. Why am I doing that? That question will occur eventually if you stay long enough on the spiritual path. But remember, you cannot go back to your old life, because now you've realized things that you didn't realize before. So going back to your old life, your old identity, is virtually impossible. So the only way is forward. And where does that way lead? Where does that path lead? It's to your true self, which is divinity. So that path is a path that not the majority of people take. Essentially, all people will wake up. Not everyone will wake up in this incarnation, but essentially they will wake up because reincarnating on this planet again and again and again, you start seeing just true things. You start seeing that this world has nothing to offer you. You've already achieved things, you've already gained things, but there is still something that you cannot satisfy. And that is when you're in the best place possible for a spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening, we could say, means that you awaken to your own pureness of your awareness. You awaken to that divinity within you. That is essentially what spiritual awakening is. And spiritual awakening is a progressive path for the most part. There are exceptions with people like Ramana Maharshi or Eckhart Tolle. You probably know them, where they had a sudden enlightenment. But that's not how it happens for the majority of people. For the majority of people, it's a progressive path, because the vessel needs to be prepared to be able to hold truth, to be able to hold realization and awakening. And the divine or God will never give you more than you can handle. It will never burden you with things that you are not ready for. Because see it that way, you're reaching to the divine within you, but that divine is also reaching to you. So it's not only you reaching, it's internal. It's not only you reaching to connect to divinity, but it's also divinity reaching through you by by signaling you internally that there is nothing that can satisfy that ache, that suffering within you, that it's always there. And some of you, I do at least, might feel it like something in the chest area, somewhere around here, like a pressure, a tightness. And I'm going to tell you, I have had this for probably almost 10 years. I've had that ache within, and it never disappeared really. And I thought that it was a problem. I thought it was a psychological problem. I thought it was a biological problem, like something in my chemistry is not right. I thought that it's my emotions somehow. And it turned out that it was not a problem. It turned out that it's not a psychological problem, it's not subconscious problem, it's not biological, it's not emotional, and it's not spiritual problem. It comes the closest to being a spiritual problem, but it's not really a problem. That ache in the middle of the chest that some of you might also have, there is a very good explanation to that, which is divinity is calling you back within yourself. And again, the only time that ache or suffering within me disappears 100% completely is only when I do my spiritual practice. Other than that, there is always some level of it there. So I know that my spiritual practice is what this ache within me is calling me to do. That's how you're being called. It's not from the outside. You're not being called to read 10 books, or which also has its place. Reading books is good. Sure. Watching videos like this, of course. But the real calling is internal. It comes from something deeper within yourself that wants you to go there. That is the calling of the divine upon your life. That's how you know you're being called on the spiritual path. By realizing that you've tried everything to satisfy that internal suffering, but nothing did actually work. And then you have no other choice than to sit quietly. Sitting quietly in silence is the ultimate spiritual practice. Meditation, self-inquiry, prayer, these three that I mentioned, they are essentially trying to get you to stillness. Stillness is the essence of these three practices. You need stillness, you need quiet, so that you can connect with that divinity within you without the mind always getting in the way. That's the thing about the mind, which is also a huge thing on the spiritual path. You realize that the mind has a constant chatter that you cannot stop. You cannot do anything about it. You cannot. And basically, these thoughts that you have, they're not your thoughts. They just pop up. You cannot know what thoughts you have in a second or two. Thoughts come the way they come without you doing anything about them. We could say they come from the subconscious mind and so on. However you want to frame it, these thoughts you have every single day on daily basis, they're not your thoughts. But because they're so intertwined with your consciousness, you believe you are these thoughts. And essentially, you believe you're the character in these thoughts. You believe you're the I in these thoughts. But that's a construct of the mind. You are the consciousness or the awareness in which these thoughts appear. You are the space in which the movements happen. That is your essence. That is your divinity, your divine spark. And only stillness can get you there. So you need to readjust your lifestyle. You need to spend more time in silence, spend more time in stillness, in just living a more quiet life. Because that ultimately is the way you awaken. You cannot awaken if you're always busy. If you're always doing things, you cannot really awaken. There is a saying somewhere that says that awakening or enlightenment belongs to those supremely lazy, for who even blinking is too much of an effort. What this means is not that you're lazy in a way that you watch, let's say, all the time something, or you just don't do anything. It's not really laziness what they're pointing to with saying that. What they're pointing to is that those people who can actually sit still and not do anything for extended period of time, no TV, no phone, no book, no videos, nothing, just sit there in boredom, it's those people who will reach enlightenment, those people who will reach awakening. Because that is the path. Stillness, being quiet, is the true and only path back to divinity. Because divinity, again, is not somewhere outside of yourself, it's within. As Jesus Christ said, the kingdom of God is within you. And all the spiritual masters have always said the same truth, which is that the path is within. The kingdom of God is within. What they were referring to, they were referring to that divine spark within you, that again, it keeps calling you from within if you feel that inner suffering all the time. Even though it's somewhere in the background sometimes, it's still there. That's what you're being called to do. You're being called to find a practice, a stillness practice, where you become quiet, you become still, and you actually experience who and what you are. Because who and what you are is essentially the kingdom of God. Who and what you are is the one and only path on this spirituality thing that we're doing. There is nothing besides that. All practices are made or are created so that they fit different personality types. Not everyone will resonate with meditation. Not everyone will resonate with self-inquiry or prayer. But there is a practice that resonates with you, which for 99% of the people on the spiritual path, it's one of these three. There is this 1% that I don't know, there are always exceptions. That's what I want to say. There are always exceptions to every rule. But again, you need a stillness practice. It may not be in a traditional sit down meditation way, but at least turn off everything, turn off the TV, turn off your phone or leave it somewhere you don't see it, and just be here, be still. You don't need to close your eyes, just be still. Again, closing your eyes does help a lot. It's way easier that way because you're tuning out the external and you're tuning in to the internal. And that's why closing your eyes is actually very beneficial and it's very useful and it's a practical thing to do to get you to experience, because we're talking about experience. We're not talking about believing into things. We're not talking about believing into reincarnation, believing in God, believing in something mystical. We're talking about direct experience of your true nature, which is divinity. That's what we're talking about. That's what you want. That's what you need to experience. It's the directness for you have seen with your own awareness that the inner reality is way more real than the outer reality, and that outer reality actually comes from the inner reality. The inner reality is the essence of everything, and nothing could exist without that inner reality. That's where everything comes from. You could say it's the source, you could say it's your divine spark, you could say it's the kingdom of God within you, you could say it's Buddha within you, you could say it's Jesus within you, you could say whatever you like. It's basically there is something within you that remains untouched by anything in this world, that remains unbothered, and the only way you can tune into that is stillness. So stillness practice is the heart of every spiritual practice. So find your own rhythm to this. Again, if you're new to this path, try meditation, try self-inquiry, try prayer, or try all of them and see what resonates with you. If all these three resonate, then do all of them, find time to do them. You will thank yourself later. You will thank existence. You will thank the divine within you that has called you on this path, because now you don't seek meaning outside of yourself. Meaning is within you. Purpose is within you. Not in a sense of life purpose, this is what I need to do with my life, but you realize that your purpose is to come back to yourself. Your purpose is to come back to your divinity, realize it, get in touch with it, and have a direct experience with that. What is the direct experience? It's very simple. Once you meditate for a while, once you pray for a while, let's say a few days in a row, you will sense something within you. And it doesn't feel anything mystical. It's the most natural thing that you have. It's somewhere around your chest again. That's your center. And there is something, a very nice feeling there when you meditate, when you pray, when you investigate who you are, which is self-inquiry. There is a peace within you that remains untouched, and every time you do your spiritual practice, that same peace, that same contentment, that same everything is always there waiting for you to keep returning. And that is your entire spiritual path, is to find time in your everyday life to do the practice. Without the practice, you're not really doing anything. You could watch all the videos, you could read all the books. If you don't do the practice, you're not going anywhere. It's only the practice that will give you what you're seeking for. Even though sometimes you don't know you're seeking something, later you realize, wait, I'm seeking something, but I don't know what I'm seeking. You're seeking that. You're seeking your divinity. And only a practice of stillness and quiet can give you that, which again are meditation, self-inquiry, and prayer. The main three practices. There are again probably more that I'm not aware of, and that's cool. You don't need everything, you only need what you need. So find the practice that resonates with you and do it every single day. You're allowed to take breaks 100%. No one can tell you these are the rules, but the one basic rule is you have a spiritual practice and you attend to it every single day. If you need a break, take a break, but then get back to it, because that is your ultimate purpose in this life, is to get back to your divinity, to get back home. Home is within. That's how you transcend the cycle of death and rebirth. That's how you ascend to higher levels of consciousness. That's how you experience the divine. It's by attending to your spiritual practice every single day and having a direct experience with that. So this would be for today. I'm sorry if I had to repeat myself many times. That's how it flows. And I feel like that's important to emphasize and to embed what I want to share, to awaken within you something that it's already there. And by repeating stuff, repeating the words, just framing them in a different way does really help. I know, because I've experienced that with other people, people who I watched, people, books I've read, and repeating something is powerful. That's why also mantras are powerful. I'm not really familiar with mantras, not to the extent I am with meditation, prayer, and self-inquiry. But I know they're also useful. So that is also a powerful way, the mantra. So feel free to do your own research. But even if you don't do any research, just do the practice. That's the most important thing. It's more important than everything else. So that's it for today. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.